Wow. That was amazing, wasn't it?
Yes. Yes, it was.
You positive? You don't sound like you're as amazed as I am.
I'm not sure to what you're referring, actually.
That song that we open every show with.
Oh, yeah, I dig that song.
Anyways, folks, welcome to Sounds Like Liberty. I am Nikki P, here as always with my lovely wife co-host Lizzie. And we are here with our 60th episode with the Launchpad Media, always launching ideas in your direction. How are y'all doing today?
Hey, am I part of y'all? I'm all right.
Well, no, actually, you're not part of y'all, but I figured you were going to speak for them.
Oh, no, I don't tend to speak for people
No, Liz,
because I'm
listen,
me and not them.
Listen, you're the Lorax of our fan base. I'm Liz. I speak for the fans.
That's just silly.
Is it?
Kinda.
So, anyways, folks, we have a fantastic episode, and I have a time limit to get it all in. So, I'm not going to do a whole lot of talking right now. What I will say is that, holy crap, we got Michael Bolden on, and this is one of my favorite episodes we've recorded to date.
Yeah.
So, let's get right on into it.
All right.
Anything you think we need to talk about first?
Heck no. Let's do it.
All right, let's dive. Welcome to the Sounds Like Liberty there, Michael. I'm Nikki B here with my wife Lizzie.
Hello.
We are
Hi. Oh, let's do it. Yeah.
we are the puff piece of libertarian shows.
Keeping it fluffy.
It is fluffy. I'm fluffy. And so we essentially this whole show is just to suss out when we get to Ancapistan who are the cool people that I'm going to choose to spend time with and who aren't. So
Nice.
I'm going to rate everything off of your taste in music, and if you listen to shitty music, we'll just have to find someplace else to go.
Okay. This is going to take like a few hours. Let's do it.
Well, I think it was we had Michael. Was it the other? Was it
Mahari?
Yeah, we had Michael Mahari on.
Mike Mahari.
couple months ago.
Boring. I wouldn't talk to that guy.
Like he likes 80s goth music, so that's fine by me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's kind of a synth pop kind of guy, right?
And he said that the guy that we really needed to talk to was Michael Bolden.
This is true.
Wait, so I wonder if he gave you his reason for this, because I'm curious why he thinks I'm the guy to talk to when it comes to music.
I don't know.
You're just like, shit, let's go for it and see what this is all about. And if it sucks, we don't have to post it.
Well, there is an ulterior motive. I'm trying to get as many people surrounding Tom Woods so eventually he runs out of excuses not to. So that
you
he
want to
comes.
do like a Yes episode?
Oh, I fronted a prog tribute band. I could talk Yes forever if I needed to.
Okay. I don't know if I can go that route.
But I've got. When we had Bob Murphy on, we talked about the Beastie Boys and musicals.
Yep.
So
that must have been fun. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that.
yeah, Bob
How long
Murphy
ago
is
was
just. That was a while ago.
It was
I
a
don't
little
remember.
while back,
But
but
Bob-
it was a good time.
Bob is a fun
Did you
man.
get Murphy to sing on that episode?
He did
No,
not
didn't.
sing on the episode.
He's
but
too serious about it. And like he said, I'm sure he's told a lot of people this. You know, people think that I can just go up there and riff something, but he's really serious.
he did give
about
that
his
impression.
singing.
Well,
Yeah, no, he preps it. He's like, I'm just not going to just jump up anywhere without a plan.
Yeah.
well, and see, and that there lies the. I'm actually a professional. Like I on weekends I do the cover band thing. I got a gig tonight. I've got to go do solo, and so I have certain feelings about people that do karaoke in general.
Okay.
You know that
I don't do
they're-
karaoke,
They're
so let's talk about that.
They're interlopers
Yeah.
in my world. They're
I can feel that.
they're fake professionals. Like, sure, you got one song you can go up and kill, but can you do it for 3 hours night after night, bro? Just saying.
Not a cover band. Karaoke is not a cover band. That's your hashtag.
There you go.
That's a great hashtag. So, where do you come from musically?
Holy crap. Okay, so we're gonna go way back.
Sure.
My whole family is very musically inclined. Like we all learned on some instrument. I wanted to be a trumpet player because my great uncle Sam, the Sicilian, he used to play this trumpet. My mother said, "Oh no, that'll screw up your upper lip. Look, he has to have this mustache." Blah blah blah.
Just for the record, that piece of information alone just puts so many things in perspective with the Michael Bolton situation. Oh, Sicilian, I get it. This all makes sense now. He's one of us.
So, my grandfather, my father's side, last name Bolden, he was, I guess, mostly Russian. He used to claim that his real last name was Boldini because he wanted to be his wife was a Campione. My mother's side was Orlando and Chiardo, so mostly Italian. So he always wanted to be there as well. But Uncle Sammy Orlando played the trumpet, and I love the man. I wanted to play the trumpet. My mother wouldn't let me. I still love horns. I love horns to this day. So any Preservation Hall jazz band kind of stuff, I'm way in on. But I ended up playing piano. So I played classical piano for my entire childhood. I got pretty decent, but I haven't touched it in like 30 years. My sister, on the other hand, actually runs one of the most successful chamber orchestras in Boston. And when she first started, they just had their 20th anniversary a year or so ago. When they first started, I remember her, it's long enough ago, where she faxed me a copy of basically what the Boston Globe said. It was like, who the hell are these people trying to come into our town of storied history and play chamber music? And they basically ripped on her. And then after a few concerts, they said, we eat our words. And they just did a whole profile on her. And the Chameleon Arts Ensemble for their 20-year anniversary. So that's the background.
Chameleon Arts Ensemble, that's what they're called?
Yeah, chameleonarts.org if we're doing promo for my sister.
Absolutely.
An amazing human being.
Well, so you're all doing good work is what it sounds like. Or do you have a black sheep?
Politically, where my sister and I only get along, he's a Bostonian, she's a Massachusetts lady, through and through. The only way we get along is there was an example. We had this conversation a few years ago, and I don't know what I had said about like an F-35, blah, blah, blah. And she says, an F-35 is a weapon of mass destruction. I'm like, man, that is a great perspective. Like, she's really good on the war issue.
Is she still good on the war issue? She didn't go the way of the other lefties and they forgot about it?
No, I think in her heart, she's a very peaceful human being. And I think that goes with her music as well, too. So
that's why I always try and tell people, like, everyone has their ideas of libertarians as being this one thing. I'm like, most of us just sit and bitch about war, like, all the time. Like,
when we keep going through my music taste, that's all we're going to talk about.
I mean, that's not surprising.
What else we want to talk about? So I did that as a kid, played piano. And then as an adult, one of my many careers that I've had that all kind of line up, I was a nightclub promoter for about a decade. So I booked gigs and
What kind of nightclub?
Oh, I was house music, dude. So
nice.
Clearly.
Is there any other?
He's like, I've listened to a lot of Mark Farina in my day. That's what we can say.
Wow. I booked Mark a few times. So yeah.
I got into mushroom jazz in college. You can do the math on that one.
Great. So he was originally from Chicago. So I was probably like second wave Chicago underground house, gay black discos, right? Late night, overnight, wailing vocals, really interesting mixed crowds. And I did that in multiple cities for a number of years. I was pretty successful. Here in LA, I spent a lot of time. I had a pretty decent following. I worked with a guy from an old label called Moonshine Music. His name's Dave Audet. He's now got a bunch of Grammys for remixing like Madonna and things like that. And we used to do these events, and I decided I wanted to move my event. We had a pretty decent following that I got through working with Dave. And then I moved all my events into West Hollywood, which is that's Boys Town here in LA, or at least at the time it was almost entirely just segregated gay clubs. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to take people who weren't necessarily hanging around in the evening together and bring them all together. So I did these straight nights in gay clubs, and we had all this kind of interesting crowds where we have drag queens and some douchebags all in the same place. But the whole tagline that I put out there was that you can celebrate life through music. So you can set aside whatever you may think is different or uninteresting or something you're freaked out about by other people, and set that all aside to be together under the umbrella of music that you may love. And even if people don't like it.
We're totally hashtagging this episode Bolden's Gay Agenda.
That was amazing. I mean, that's super cool.
Can you hashtag gay black disco? Because that's the winner.
Oh, yeah. I'm okay with that one, too.
Yeah, you're not going to get any... Yeah, as I always joke with people, because I'm one of the rare ANCAPs from a lefty. Like, I was never a Republican. I was a neocon. So, I just
I was a commie. I was a proud Marxist for a number of years.
So how do you find your way? Are you still a commie and you just hang out with the non-commies, or are you actually...
I think I'm a non-commie that hangs out with the commies. I was a real one. But I was a real one. And, and we could talk a little bit about Pete Seeger too, because Pete is really... Once I got politically active, I think Pete was really my guy. Pete, Lennon, Johnny Cash, Marley, Woody Guthrie. So even though I come from, I guess the musical end where I come from would be classical, even some jazz and blues, at least from my piano end of it, and where my parents kind of
what's funny is that I'm probably the only person here that's going, yeah, those types of people are oil and water, bro. The classical people don't like jazz people, so what you're saying is nonsense to me.
It's pretty weird, right? I
love them both, but
and maybe that's why I was never a professional musician. And my sister just went straight classical, although she has kind of eclectic taste in her personal time as well. And then to go from there to the disco world, and then once I became active as an activist, once I started getting involved in life more than just throwing parties and things like that, then music with a message was far more important to me. And that's what drew me to people like Seeger. Now, Seeger, I know a lot of people say, oh, well, he was just a commie. And I saw this film, I think there's a documentary on him maybe 10 years ago, mid 2000s, called Power of Music. And they were interviewing Pete about this. And they were like, oh, well, what was this about you being a communist? He got blacklisted. He wasn't allowed to perform on TV. He was off for a long time. Then he came on television and he attempted on live show. I think it was the Smothers Brothers, some real popular comedy show. He finally is off the blacklist. It can perform on television. He goes out and performs Waist Deep in the Big Muddy. If you guys know about this is where it's a late 60s, 67-ish, a song about Vietnam. They're waist deep in the mud, in the muck. And Seeger's saying, and the big fool said to push on over and over and over. That's talking about the warmongers, just telling you no matter how horrible it is, just keep going, keep fighting the war. Now, with television, network television, that actually didn't air. They cut it while he was performing. And then he finally was able to perform it like a year or so later. But it was that type of message. And because my activism coming from the left during the Bush years, my activism was almost entirely focused on anti-war, opposing the warfare state. It was musicians like Seeger and Lennon and Cash and Marley that really, really meant something to me.
Interesting. Well, so when I do the Freedom Song 365 project, and one of the things a lot of the music that makes the cut for the list is by people I'm sure who would, at the very least call themselves progressives, if not socialists.
Yeah, or union supporters. If you're talking about like Woody Guthrie, this is like a 1930s, 1940s folk singer all about the unions. But and Seeger used to do in some of the live performances, he did a lot of Woody songs, but he talks about this one song, I think it was Acres of Clams. It's just a folk song. Yeah. But he and Woody were kind of messing around, hanging out together. Woody was being interviewed by the FBI recently. And so they're going through just riffing some of their own lyrics to it. And at one point, Woody actually, and I've heard Pete sing this as well, Woody basically said, the FBI asked me about, what I would do for my country. And Guthrie says, of course I'd carry a gun for my country, but I can't guarantee you which way I'm going to point it. So this is like the old school left. They're very pro gun rights as well. It just maybe.
Well, no,
being
no,
a little
absolutely.
different.
Well, I mean, honestly, like, and I guess I kind of got politically engaged during what you would call like the Occupy era,
Oh, okay.
and the thing that I continue to see is that they're not wrong. Like, they all see the problems, but when you don't understand,
Solution,
when you don't understand economics, you don't
Yes.
you can't properly see where the problem is. You just fight the one thing that you know how to fight, which is the religion that we have here in America, which is money. So you just say, oh, they have money, so it must be them.
Yes.
And, you know, money is a symptom, perhaps, of the actual problem. So I get frustrated because I just want to be angry at lefties all the time, but it's like I care about all the same things you do. Like, I want a better world for black, brown people.
Rothbard, of course, had a great essay on this too, though. I think it was Left and Right Prospects for Liberty, I think is one it was. I know I'll get some eye rolls from some Rothbard experts, which I am not, that, okay, there's his one. He had this short time where he wanted to work with the left, but it resonates to me. And if it brings people into the movement, I guess we could call it, then that's positive. If someone can agree with me on wanting to stop the empire and at least one war, even if they're not opposed to all of them, cut back or end the surveillance state, the drug war, but then they're bad on some other things, then you know what? I'll find ways to work with them on the good stuff. And then hopefully that'll earn some trust. And then maybe at some point they'll say, you know what, that Bolden dude, he was pretty good on Iraq or on, Iran, whatever it may be coming up next. What does he have to say about this other issue? And I've had that happen, at least in my life, many, many times.
Well, I know I have
it builds some trust.
I have some friends that, are card-carrying DSA members, but they're also
nice.
they're also the same people. Like, the bottom line is most of those people, they've done a con job on them. Like, they're the same people that believe that, oh, well, socialism just means sharing. And that's not what socialism is. And that DSA knows that's not what socialism is. But we're more than happy to help you let you spread our message, unbeknowing what it is.
Yes.
And that's very, it's politics. I get it, but it's also incredibly frustrating that's.
Well, for those of us who are very much anti-war, and the reason I brought up Seeger right off the bat, this film.
He did it for a long time.
They basically asked him, so what was your deal with being a communist? And he said, I was anti-war. And the only people who were actually being anti-war were the communists. So, of course, I was a communist too. And he listed a few other things that were important to him. He was, for civil rights, and the only people really out there doing it were the communists. And I think that there's something to be said for that. And that's why I really like it when libertarians, ANCAPs, etc., really make such a big issue about war, because being a so-called peace advocate really has been kind of the purview of the left. I know a lot of people want to say, the old right was it, but I don't think there's much of that. Even though the mainstream left is really crappy on these things too, the public perception, what the market thinks about it, I think says a lot.
There's so much gold in there. You got so serious talking about it.
Okay. So
that's good stuff, though.
What do you want to talk about? Cash?
No, you're good. You're good. I'm just picking.
We can do some redemption song if you want to get Bob Marley. Let's do it.
That's also a very commie song too. Despite
they
having
all are. I
know.
was a commie, so this stuff appealed to me. But then for some reason, I still hold on to a lot of these messages. Seeger singing "Draft Dodger Rag," talking about which way he's going to point a gun. What did you learn in school today was a huge one, talking about how the government education complex is really just a propaganda machine.
Oh no! That's for me. Like, anytime. While all of my friends are anti-war, I'll be the first to say the war is not my first issue, because the fact of the matter is the war would end tomorrow if we stopped educating people into believing that there's a cause to fight for. And for me, it's the school system. We continue to pump out little fucking drones, and that's where my soapbox is, so to speak. And then I'm glad that there's people whose soapbox is the Fed, because if you have people attacking the Fed, then you can't fund it.
Yeah.
Yes.
At the end of the day, it's the whole thing is that there's these three pillars that all feed off of each other, and if you can topple any of the one, you can bring down the rest of it. But it's all It's also sometimes frustrating. But so,
What do you mean? It's amazing.
it'd be amazing if we could seem to make any progress.
Well,
Do you feel like you've made any progress? Why don't you tell us a little bit? I'm sure everyone.
we're not
who's
talking
listening
music
is-
anymore?
No, we're talking music. But I'm kind of curious as to. Do you feel like we've made progress? Do you think that
Who's
That's a good
we,
one.
first of all?
that's what I'm getting at? So,
Okay.
what exactly do you do? Why do people know you? Why do I know you?
That's a great question.
Well, Tom Woods, we'll say, is how I found out about Michael. I'm going to be honest.
Tom
So here's-
Tom has a friend who is literally like his backup. When something's going wrong or I want to test something out, I call him. His name's Michael Bolden, and he does like this podcast. Tom wanted to start a podcast a while back, and he's like, "Oh man, I'm going to try this out." Bolden, you want to do an episode with me of a podcast? Yeah, man, that sounds fun. And that's how that kind of began. But
How
Tom
many,
and I have been
how many
friends for a
years
long
ago was
time.
that, by the way?
When Tom started his show?
It's been
Oh,
forever.
man, yeah, it's been quite a while.
You see, I
You
think
know,
the first thing I remember Michael Bolden doing, because I knew that you'd come on the show a couple times to talk about the 10th Amendment Center, but I think
Yep.
the first thing that really like got me on the Michael Bolden bandwagon might have been the 1000th episode.
Oh man, that was so fun. So for anybody who has not watched this, just do a YouTube search, find the thing. It was so much fun doing this roast of Tom Woods and hosting this dad joke competition. And I mean, a lot of people think I can be a very serious dude, but if I'm called on to do a roast, I read a book about it on the plane. I prepped. I'm like, man, I said, Tom, are you sure? Is there anything I can't say? Is there anything where I'm crossing the line? And I got a tip on maybe some things that might cross the line. And I didn't cross any lines, but I let her rip. It was a lot of fun.
It was immensely entertaining.
It
I
was-
did
it was
watch
fucking
that.
hilarious.
If you
is what it
can't
was.
hammer on your friends, then they're not your friends anyways.
So how did Tom know you to know that you're the guy to call? That's what I'm curious about.
Well, we've known each other for about, I'm going to guess, like almost 10 years now. We had communicated for a while, and he may not remember that early on. Back in my activism days really, really started right after the Iraq War. Still hard left. I was out marching in the streets, getting pushed to the ground by cops and tracked vehicles in front of the Veterans Building here near UCLA. And so I was involved in a lot of hard left Answer Coalition, which is a communist organization, plus California Peace Action. So I was doing all this stuff, but then at the same time, I was like listening to podcasts by Harry Brown and learning how, like, oh wow, they're not just bad on war, they're bad on everything, or they're lying to you about stuff. So I just kind of had this transition, and as I was learning stuff, I'm reading LouRockwell.com and then emailing authors saying, hey, I got questions about this or that. And when I eventually started my website in 2006, I started inviting people to submit articles, and Tom was kind enough to let me republish stuff or just get back to me from time to time. So we had communicated for a few years before I started I basically did a nightclub tour of nullification events. I did 12 cities where I was, and I did it like that. We printed tour shirts, the whole thing. I'm like, man, this feels like the same as doing club promotion, but for maybe a little bit better cause. And Tom headlined most of those events. And we met, I think, in Texas, probably like 2009, 2010.
And see, and that fascinates me is like, because that is being able to and being good at club promotion, like being able to be a decent promoter is such a valuable skill set. Like, I wish I had that skill set as a musician. Like, I could probably be doing a lot more, making a lot more money if I was
You
good
have
at
to
that
have
part of
very
it.
low moral standards. So be thankful that you did not have to go through that.
So, one of the things that interests me, and especially given what you kind of told us earlier about like where you came from, for those who don't know Michael has been on some famous lists by some famous organizations, and I'm curious about how you deal with that, considering at one point in your life you were actively promoting, kinship with, say, gay black clubs in West
Oh
Hollywood.
man, if I were able to be out late at night, I would be, if I were going to be in a nightclub, I just don't go anymore. Like I have a really long time buddy who does front of house. He tours with all these bands all the time. And when he literally just invited me, like Orange County Fair, he's like this massive stage. He's like, you want to come? I'll get you some free tickets. I just can't do it. It's the crowds or something like that. But if I were to go out to a club or a gig, it would be at 3 a.m. And I know the disco I would be going to, and it would be the same thing today because I like the vibe. I like a mix of people. I like people just being peaceful and friendly. And
but you're a horrible racist, Michael Bolton. How is that possible?
Right. So how did it feel when I got on the Southern Poverty Law Center list?
We didn't even have to say it. We knew what you're talking about.
I mean, not even the list. It's like there are a lot of people on the list. I'm not on the list. I am a featured leader of the radical right in their hate watch, one of 30 people. So I'm an elite group of 30 on the Southern Poverty Law Center. And, you know, I talk to all media. Some people do not like talking to leftist media, which I guess in many situations is just a redundant phrase. But I talk to all of them. I talk to the New York Times a lot. I talk to LA Times. I'll do all of these, Wall Street Journal, whatever it may be. And in almost every single situation, they are at least fair to me. I've had New York Times regional editors actually email me saying, oh, hey, this is what we're going to publish in the article. Did we quote you properly? So I've generally been treated.
So they didn't Walter block you?
No. No lawsuit from me needed. So, but Walter's got a column, which is amazing, right? So that all worked out great. Then again, maybe he's not still doing that, but I know he's published some columns as a result of that. So
interesting.
I generally talk to everybody. I would talk to, I've also had a 10 to 15 minute segment from Rachel Maddow, just the entire segment on the 10th Amendment Center, not me by name, but our organization going after us. And I remember Lou Rockwell had emailed me, or maybe I reached out to him. I can't do a Lou Rockwell impersonation, but he basically said, you know, Michael, I know the pin hurts, but it's a badge of honor. And like that to me is like one of the coolest emails I've ever received.
Yeah.
But SPLC, I won't talk to them because I don't believe, like Maddow and her people, they won't even contact me. Like if the New York Times will at least talk to you, that's one thing, but Maddow won't even try to reach out to you. They'll just look for stuff online and try to quote you out of context. And that's basically what the SPLC does too, although they did reach out to me and say, hey, we want to talk to you. And I just am like, nah, no way. A year before, you were
on there with Tim Pool, weren't you? And he ended up having to file a suit to get himself removed. But
see, you know, when I had thought about trying to be removed at some point, but now it's on my Twitter profile, you know, like I've been a leader of the radical right on the SPLC since 2012. So to me, it's basically like what Lou said. It's a badge of honor. If these guys are going after you, I mean, there are some really awful people on the SPLC list, but I think they use whatever previous credibility they had going after bad guys. Maybe they never were consistent, but I know there was a time where they did this, and they do list bad people on there. And I think this is just the straw man argument, the way of actually like lumping in people who oppose centralized power to make them look like racist pigs. But yeah, I mean, Mother Jones was really interesting. If you're familiar with that magazine, super progressive, old school rag, they actually came to my defense. They're like, well, you know, this guy doesn't seem to be the right guy to have on that list.
Ben Dreyfus writes for them. I know him from the Fifth Column.
Oh, okay. This was Stephanie Mensimer, who has been there for a long time. She had interviewed me back in 2009. I was co-hosting an event outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and she was sent down there on an assignment to talk about how racist and awful the Tea Party people were. And she wrote this article about it. And it was basically, I went down there to go after these people, and then I met this guy, pro-pot, anti-war, and then was all excited about talking about gay marriage in front of a bunch of people in Georgia. It's in the article. So,
nice.
You know, I think if you just, you know, it's the old Scott Horton rule. If you believe in liberty and you are consistent about it, you will always out-left the left and out-right the right. You're going to be way more hardcore against surveillance, against the drug war, against the nutty foreign policy. to the left, and you're going to be way better on healthcare freedom and gun rights compared to the right at all times.
For me, I'm always interested in the particular topic because being married to a black woman and a libertarian, I've been called racist more times than I care to count.
Oh,
and,
dude.
and I'm like, really? Like, I'm really bad at it.
Harry gets that too.
I know,
Harry gets that too all the time, and it's absolutely nuts. Well, they don't care if it's true or not.
Exactly, and that is
what they care about is getting that talking point out there. But they're not the only ones.
Well,
the right wingers are equally as bad. They are just as bad, and in fact, I actually believe the rabid right wing is worse in this regard. I was just talking with a friend of mine about this whole send her back thing from the president, and I'll tell you, that has been the most aggressive thing that I've ever gotten, and it was consistent. During the Bush years, we were repeatedly hammered. Every time we weren't on board with some Bush administration policy, Patriot Act, Real ID Act, the war in Iraq, bailouts, whatever it may be, it was, you must hate America. You are with the terrorists. Move to Cuba, commie. If you don't like it, leave. And I think this is just a mentality. Maybe it's the same on the left, but I think that the right has been very aggressive.
Which I'd love to leave, but you're going to charge me to do it, and then you're going to bomb my country anyways. Go. So
charge, I think, is an understatement. And eventually, that wall will be there, and no one will be able to leave.
Well, because I think it's like, depending on where you live, it's a couple, like, at least $2,000 to get to denounce your citizenship in the U.S.
Is it only 2,000?
I think it depends, because I've heard up to 6.
Okay, because I think it was Roger Ver. He's a guy who runs Bitcoin.com. He's a crypto guy, old school. He used to call him Bitcoin Jesus, right? And I've heard Roger talk about giving up his citizenship, and it was somewhere around $5,000 or $6,000 too. Just a crazy amount, unaffordable for many people. So, for example, if you're thinking about, at one point before I got active, I had thought about leaving the country, and there were a lot cheaper places to live on Earth than in the U.S. And I was looking into that. But if you add $5,000 to that becomes a hurdle that you really can't get over. It's just
and once again, where do you go that you're not going to be affected by American foreign policy, anyways?
Well, that's a good point. But my thought at the time was, well, I could live a lot easier on these inflated U.S. dollars in, for example, Brazil at the time. And this is a long time.
You weren't going to Chile?
I had thought about it, actually. So I had there was a point in time where I sold all my crap. I was done with club promoting. It was a cash business. I had not worked for 2 years. I was just kind of living this whatever, kind of a Larry David lifestyle without a lot of money. I would just walk around and stop in at shops and go meet people for lunches and talk trash or whatever it may be.
That sounds so LA. This is what
it is the epitome of LA.
Like, you go make enough money to live off of for a while, and then you don't do anything until you need money again. I lived
pretty cheap. I didn't own a car. I did live cheap, but I wanted to live that lifestyle, and I wanted to keep it going as I was starting to get to the end of it. And a friend of mine and I found like a 2-bedroom apartment, at least at the time, in Ipanema, basically Copacabana Beach in Rio, that we could get for like $300 a month. That we could pay like 6 months in advance, which at the time I think was the length of the visa. So we were going to do that for 6 months, go to Buenos Aires, where one of my closest friends' family is from, and then go to Santiago and just kind of keep rotating around. He ended up jumping out of my car on the Sunset Strip at some point trying to kill himself, so we never made that trip. And here we go.
If it couldn't get more California.
So true. It's all fear and loathing in LA.
Oh, jeez.
Oh my goodness. So, if we were to say, let's talk about some lyrics to a song.
Okay.
What song would you pick?
Oh my God! What did you learn in school today?
Okay.
This is Pete Seeger. I learned that Washington never told a lie. I learned that soldiers seldom die. I learned that everybody's free. That's what the teacher said to me. And this is really, to me, this is foundational. And this comes from a commie, a different type than we have today, old school, who are recognizing that the empire is always going to fill your heads with propaganda.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, for me, it all boils down to school. You don't. I mean, we're already seeing, even as good a job as school does, the military is having trouble getting people to sign up, even as it is. Now, I don't think they're having trouble getting people to support the wars. They're seeming to be really good at that, but getting people to actually sign up has been difficult.
Are recruitment levels way down?
Oh, wait. They're already talking about trying to allow 16-year-olds to enlist.
Oh my God! Really?
Yep.
Holy crap. Well, the positive part, I know a lot of people complain about social media. I think social media is incredibly awesome. I love it. I love it even when it is the most toxic thing on earth, because what it's doing is it's basically smoking out the toxic people. It's exposing them. The more that they're going to do this, the more we're going to be aware of how awful people are. This is a market response in my book. But maybe part of this is it's creating this entrepreneurial society where kids are like, man, why would I do that when I could put as much effort into trying to be a YouTube gamer or something like that? To me, that's amazing.
Oh, for sure. Like, I was just listening to somebody who moved from Twitch to some other function and is, making millions of dollars to go and be an exclusive streamer on this other streaming service. And all he does is play Fortnite for 8 hours a day.
Of course, Fortnite.
Yeah.
Okay, more lyrics. What about Marley?
So I'm curious about this particular song. I actually pulled up the lyrics. So
okay, how did I do on them?
You actually doing pretty good.
Okay, I've gone through. There are some Seeger live concerts that back in the early days of actually getting out in the streets and doing activism, I was listening to this stuff. When I find a song that I like, I'll listen to it on repeat for hours. It's like I have an OCD with music, and sometimes that means I'll listen to a very limited amount, but that's
really into it.
Oh yeah, well, I did that with film too. So when I first saw Doctor Strange, I wasn't allowed to watch any movies as a child. We were a very restrictive Catholic family, and any film that I ever saw, if I got to see, I never went to the movie theater in my entire upbringing. But when we got to see a movie, it was on VHS tape, and I only learned into my early adult years, in my somewhere early to mid 20s. For example, I used to love the film Airplane. I saw it 15 times as a kid, and then I saw it with some friends later on at some party or something. I'm like, oh my God, is this like an extended cut? Because what my parents were doing was taking the movies, cutting out all the stuff, making copies on VHS, and then showing it to us.
You know that there's a market that actually does that now for you.
Is there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Tom Woods actually had somebody on as a guest once talking about his particular company that does it. But there's actually a few different organizations. It's your dad.
There you go.
That'd be amazing if he's got a business going. I just don't know.
So I'm looking at the second verse here. I learned that policemen are my friends. I learned that justice never ends, that murderers die for their crimes, even if we make mistakes sometimes.
Yes.
Like, it's just so much of what we learn in school. The country must be strong. It's always right and never wrong. Our leaders are the finest men, and we elect them again and again.
And again.
Well, because we just got to get the right people in there. That's all it is. We've just got to get the right people in there.
Vote harder, people.
Well, that's what I love about some of the old school lefties is that, and I have a friend who lived in Berkeley for many years, and he would tell me the same type of thing. He's like, man, a place like Berkeley is where you're going to find this weird combination. Sometimes the left, if you look at it like a circle rather than arrows left and right or up and down, they'll go so far left that they're actually saying things like, yeah, I believe in the right to keep and bear arms. I believe in the Second Amendment. The workers, they got to be armed. They have a different goal. Yeah. Sometimes you'll find some common ground there. And I think somebody like Seeger really is that kind of old school, late 60s Berkeley person where they weren't opposed to the right to keep and bear arms. They didn't trust government. They were opposed to empire. They didn't like the government schools because they got this particular kind of existence out of it.
Well, they see, which is funny because, they see the American consumerism. Like, they can see what we're like, we're forcing everyone to believe in capitalism and teaching them that it's this great thing. Whereas on the other side of the coin, I'm like, well, I don't see capitalism anywhere near where we are. I see them like pretending that they have capitalism. And so, because I'll talk with some of the more, what is it, C4SS people.
Okay, yeah.
Where, to me, my definition of capitalism, I think, is I choose not to use the Marxist definition of capitalism because I think he did his best to weigh down what the term means.
Well, isn't that a tough battle to fight then?
Like, absolutely. Like, it's like, so I got into it. One of the things I got into is someone who's like, well, I believe in, co-ops and things like that. I'm like, I'm okay with that. He's like, well,
Yeah.
there's no profit from it. It just, you get your, like an electrical co-op that my parents belong to, and, you get electricity out of it. I'm like, well, I consider the electricity profit.
Yeah, of course.
Like,
Yes,
you're all profiting.
They're not understanding the basic.
You're all profiting X amount of electricity out of it. That's
Yeah.
profit. Like you got what you came, and it's so often I feel like we're all like we're on the same team. We're fighting these battles about semantics, and it's always semantics. But a lot of that's because I think my first bridge into the whole like anarchist society thing was I came from what's his name there. Liz.
Penn?
No. The I don't even know. Actually, if you would know.
Wow, that sounded a little condescending to me.
No. It's I don't know. I don't know that
No,
she wouldn't
we're
have been
gonna
around
have
at
to
this
talk
point in
about
time.
this. No,
She was thinking Penn Jillette, which is kind of how I like the more closer point. But no,
Okay.
Chomsky. I came in
Noam
through Chomsky.
Chomsky. Okay.
And
Okay.
because I got into
I've read a
Chomsky
lot
through
of
linguistics.
I've read a lot of Chomsky.
So like I came from like reading Pinker and Chomsky, and eventually like Chomsky kind of got me interested in like really taking a look at what was going on in the political realm.
Yes.
And then somehow that incredibly smart man just doesn't fucking pay attention to economics at all.
I think Chomsky does know.
And
I
he's-
just think he disagrees. I don't think he's an idiot.
Oh, well, no, he's definitely clearly not an idiot. He's probably one of the smartest people that's ever walked the planet, which is why it's so frustrating.
He's really, really his and his information on imperial foreign policy is oftentimes some of the best, especially with history in the Middle East. So great.
Absolutely.
But this is division of labor, right? Like you can only be really, really good at something.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Maybe two things. Some people are really gifted and they're good at 10. I mean, he's great with linguistics, obviously, and then he's really good on empire. Maybe I'm sure a lot of people have like told him about the Austrian school over the years, and maybe it's not interesting to him.
Because I know he's definitely been in communication with Gene Epstein. He's talked about some of the letters they've written back to each other.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so he's clearly aware of it. He just disagrees. And it's frustrating.
Or maybe he hasn't read enough. I mean, I've tried to read Man, Economy, and State like so many times. I cannot get through it.
I'm going to read Bob's book on it at some point.
So, yeah, maybe that's really the way to go. Because, for me, I'm not a really great reader in the first place.
I do audiobooks. I don't have time to read.
And I can't do audiobooks. And I think it might have come out of my DJ years because...
Hey, how's it going? Nikki P here. Want to support the show or just give a big middle finger to Patreon? Consider stopping over to supportsll.com. Members of the Freedom Choir get access to the private Facebook group and actual physical merch. Want access to the unedited raw interviews as they're recorded way before they're released? It's in there. Is that not enough? And you want membership to Freedom Song 365? It's in there. There's even monthly bonus swag for top tier supporters. So head on over to supportsll.com. Help Liz and I get to libertarian functions and even just cover the costs of making the show. If I'm not a good enough salesman, how about this?
Support my mom and dad and Sounds Like Liberty. Go to supportsll.com.
You heard her, folks. Join the Freedom Choir at supportsll.com.
Might have come out of my DJ years because most of the music that I was listening to for like 10 straight years, I didn't listen to any radio. I didn't know any pop music, no movies from the 90s. I was literally only in this realm, promoting my clubs, playing vinyl and booking DJs and things like that. That's all I knew. But most of the music is based off of a kick drum or a bass loop or something like that. So I basically trained as a DJ. I trained myself to almost phase out the lyrics so I could match the beats.
Yeah.
Which I don't think people really need to do anymore. So sometimes I don't even hear the lyrics.
Well, so my freshman year of college, I moved in. My first roommate was a 6'5" black guy out of Pittsburgh named Joe Cephas. And he kind of got me into hip hop because I grew up in the middle of nowhere country.
Mm-hmm.
And so this guy kind of opened up my world. Me and him weren't the same type of people, though. So second semester freshman year, I moved in with this guy by the name of Bebop. Now, the Bebop's a 400-pound black man out of Philadelphia who walks around in platinum sunglasses.
That's awesome.
And happened to be a turntable DJ. That's how
nice.
That's how I know who Mark Farina is. So
he was a house DJ.
So I'd go to sleep.
Billy.
I'd go to sleep every night in my dorm, listening to my roommate spin records right next to my fucking bed.
What year is this? What year was that?
This would be second semester, so it'd be 03, the beginning half of 03.
So late 90s, the Philadelphia kind of underground scene was really, really good in the house music.
And I'm sure he could talk your ear off on it. To me, like it's electronic. I get it. I get.
There's a guy named King Britt who has got a great record shop, and maybe still to this day, even if for archival purposes. But King Britt had a record label out of and a store in Philly as well.
Interesting.
Nice.
Let's go with that. So, but yeah. I get how that would. You get used to hearing something different. It's definitely not the same electronically now. When I do it, I look at waveforms.
We're listening to Depeche Mode and crying all the time in college. So
he's picking on Mike. That's just. This is a jab at other Mike.
I can listen to Personal Jesus, but it brings back some weird roommate memories for me.
I would be more of an INXS guy, honestly, but
really,
that's what it is. Depeche Mode's so beat heavy. INXS had I feel like what's his name could like really, really sing. And as a vocalist, that's always the thing I gravitate towards when someone can actually sing.
Yeah, Mac, back in those days, honestly though, I was more of we skipped. We went from classical to DJ to Seeger, but we skipped my heavy metal days.
How did we skip your heavy metal thing?
I see.
High school. Well, I wasn't allowed to listen to any of it. So I literally had Iron Maiden tapes, Motley Crue. I remember QR3, Quiet Riot. I'd have to put them in a Ziploc bag and shove them under the house. So you're in the Midwest. You know how the basement, you'd have this kind of, were all houses like that? I remember I could actually reach under my house for a foot or so. And I'd keep this baggie of tapes, Iron Maiden and stuff there. And then before going to bed, I would be like, I'm just going to go outside for a few minutes. And then I'd grab it. And then I'd have this old school tape player that I'd put under my pillow and listen to it and try to transcribe the lyrics and stuff. So Number of the Beast.
And what's really funny to me is we talked about Pete Seeger. The heavy metal arena is absolutely where if you want some serious anti-war lyrics, that's the place to go. So you have the hippies on this one side and the angry young men on the other side, and they're both just so pissed off at the war machine.
So Maiden's Run to the Hills was big. I didn't really understand. So this is before it was making sense to me. And it took other people kind of pointing out what I was listening to, but Maiden had a lot of that anti-imperialism.
I mean, The Trooper literally tells that song about it's.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Being trampled to death as a soldier and go die for your country. That's the whole fucking point.
Or I'm not a number, I am a free man is another. I think that was from Number of the Beast.
Look at Symphony of Destruction by Megadeth. I mean, literally everything by Megadeth is anti-war. He's so anti-war, it's insane. Which is super funny because he doesn't seem like he would be that guy. Yeah. But literally he was releasing album after album just talking shit on was it HW when he was in office.
Isn't there just something naturally human about not wanting wholesale slaughter of other people? And really the other end of the spectrum is just kind of oh wow, that's weird. I'm surprised that person is pro-war because it's not normal.
Well, here's something weird because I was looking up songs for the project to finish out, and one of the songs that somebody put on the list was "Traveling Soldier" by the Dixie Chicks.
Okay. Well, okay, that's classic at this point, right?
It's also not available on Spotify.
Oh, really?
Really?
The album Home is on there, but that song is blacked out. You can't listen to it on there. Now, not to say I can find it on YouTube and I can get it on Amazon, but I was very, very interested in the fact that that particular song is not available on Spotify.
Do you think that was label driven?
I have no doubt, because that was the song that got them banned from playing forever.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
For years and years. And here we are, what, 20, we've been through the Obama phase. We're in 2019, and I really kind of thought we'd moved past it, that wouldn't be a thing. And I'm like, really? Even now? Like, that's still a thing? It was weird.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy.
Who is a really good anti-war person? I'd never heard the song really before. I'd heard of it, but never listened to it. But John Prine, your flag decal won't get you into heaven anymore. That was a fun one.
Nice. John Prine. I mean, to me, one of the big ones has got to be Cash, too. Just because they loved him so much, like, on the right. They loved Cash. And there's an interesting documentary on Netflix now.
Go figure, their hero's a pillhead.
There are two really interesting. This one was Johnny Cash versus Tricky Dick. Which is an interesting kind, because Cash went through, maybe he was always there, but he really went through a transition in like the late 60s, early 70s. He was singing like Ballad of Ira Hayes, the Vietnam Talking Blues, and he really kind of started being more outspoken. He had his TV show, he brought Seeger on, and then people were giving him crap, like, why would you have this commie on here? You're a good right-wing American boy.
Well, I just did an analysis for Starkville City Jail last night, and what was eye-opening to me is that, like, we talk about in particular two things, like they're very modern features of like there are things that were added with the quote-unquote war on drugs, but in particular broken windows policing and civil asset forfeiture. And the whole song is about, he was out walking, picking flowers at 2 a.m. The cops saw him, threw him in the squad car, threw him in the jail cell, left him there alone, let him out in the morning, didn't give him his money back.
Oh,
and it was all over a quote-unquote curfew law. And it's like, that right there is exactly that whole fucking thing.
I have never really listened to that one closely.
And it's on the, what do you call it, Live at San Quentin.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And so he's talking to people in prison about this, and you're listening to this story, and apparently it's a true story about being in Starkville, Mississippi. This actually happened to him after a show one night. And you're just like, so the curfew law exists just so they have an excuse to fuck with you. That's why it's there.
It's stop and frisk.
And it's exactly what it is. It's stop and frisk. And the song was written in, what, I think, 69?
60s. Yeah, because that's like Folsom Prison Blues, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So 69-ish.
And it's like, I never really paid attention to it, because I live in a world where I think of Johnny Cash as being, he's country, so that's right-wing shit.
Yep.
But then you don't think about the fact that you have those guys like Woody Guthrie and John Prine that were all very, very against the war machine, what we were doing. And so many, like, even Charlie Daniels has a bunch of stuff that's like, leave me the fuck out of your bullshit and let me just be here by myself, being a country boy. Like,
and maybe this is me turning into an old man a little too early. I didn't live through that, but I think there is something about that late 60s, early 70s era. I mean, we can even get into like John Lennon going a little bit further, him and Yoko all the way up until they shot him. But there's something missing in popular music today that I think lacks a message like this. People like Cash, I think, put his neck on the line. Seeger clearly did when he got blackballed or blacklisted. He just started doing children's events. For whatever reason, he was able to do children's folk music albums, and he did those in his own little way, and eventually he worked his way back to be able to get on TV.
What I see is number one, distribution has changed, because there aren't any, like, there's no bands that are as big as those bands of the past, because there's too much decentralization for them to control it like they used to. There's a lot more music out there than there's ever been, because it's way cheaper to make music. It's way cheaper to distribute music. So what that does for consumers is there's literally a band for anyone's taste out there. You can go and find exactly what you want to hear if you can look
right.
And so what you do find is the stuff that is mass marketed is the stuff that is super easy for them to mass market. And anything complicated, this is not going to be that, unfortunately. You used to have a little bit more, they were kind of at the whims of, well, these people have this skill set. Well, now a lot of people have that skill set, so we can just.
Well, I think Cash is a great example of where I was thinking on this. Like Cash already had a reputation, and he was willing to risk his reputation to actually not be pro-war, even when Nixon invited him to perform at the White House at a special dinner. He was willing to bring Seeger on, the commie, to show that, you know what, we can be on opposite sides on various things. But when it comes to this warfare state, we're together. Like he was able to make this shift in a label-driven world where they probably didn't want him to as well. And I'm just, I don't see anybody who's actually made it into that level of distribution, caring about anything other than Lambos, picking up chicks. I mean, well, maybe that's all there is in the world.
Well, but that's Muse has an album called Drones, which
Muse is I totally stand corrected.
The music's out there. The fact of the matter is that. Other than the people,
that's my bad. I'm not even thinking.
There are those that are of us that are predisposed to pay attention to this kind of stuff, and the fact of the matter is the school system has done a bang up job at making people not care, and I think that's the more telling end of it because the music's out there. There's plenty of it.
Yeah, good call.
People just don't give a shit about
it. And Muse, we could probably find others, and you could tell me like, what about this? But Muse, I think, is big enough where they definitely qualify. Yeah.
Yeah. What is it? That's like. But the thing, I mean, technically, I think that he actually classifies himself as a libertarian.
Really?
But I think
not like an ANCOM.
And that's the thing. I think he's more. He's a libertarian in the
old
European sense of it. I think.
Yes. Okay.
And that's always because there's what's another one, and I'm always curious because he strikes me as more of a Frank Turner, and Frank Turner strikes me as more of a like. My type of libertarian, but he's English, so I have to wonder. I don't know. Well, you use that word, but what does it mean to you, really? Like
now, you're racist.
You taking my property over? No, that's not racist. That is government.
No, everything is racist. Come on.
Well, there's that.
I'm plenty of things. Racist be not the one. I'm definitely like into. I believe in cultural superiority. I'm all about that. I'll be okay with that.
As long as I can get a calzone delivered at 5 a.m.
You're like, I'm cool.
I don't even get a calzone delivered at 5 a.m. I just want to know that I
well, no, that's Liz, how much, because I grew up in the sticks and Liz always kind of fancies like going out and we get the homestead and we live out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And I'm really cool with it.
Until...
The exception of, I really fucking hate everything closing at 9 at night.
Yeah.
Like, I like being able to go to an Indian restaurant down the street. And that's important to me. We'll probably stay close to a city at some point.
Which one of you grew up in the country? Both of you?
No.
I grew up in the sticks. Like I grew up in upstate
Lizzie,
New York.
where'd you grow up?
I grew up in the city, but in Texas. So like Bible Belt City.
Like Fort Worth?
Yes, literally.
Okay. That's where I first met Tom Wood.
Oh, well, there you go.
Circle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
she's lived a couple places though, because you also lived in Germany for a while, and
yeah. Well, I was in that army machine. My whole family, the one side's in the army machine. So there you go.
Coincidentally, her dad really likes Ron Paul.
Really? Well, Ross Perot was like his favorite ever. But he is a big old Ron Paul fan.
Go figure.
I think my dad was probably a Reagan guy.
Yeah.
I think they all were.
I think
everybody's dad at some point loved Reagan.
Yeah.
Well, we kind of got off, but one of the things I was going to point out, and you were talking about maybe you're becoming an old man, but I think really I grew up through the George, like I became an adult post 9/11 and in the George W. Bush era. So for me, I literally was an adult. For my entire adult life, country music has been jingoist, racist bullshit.
Right.
And so when I look back at country music, that's what I see. I don't see necessarily that lineage of what that music was beforehand. I also think of the people.
Cashes of the world, right?
I also look and I think of the country where I grew up in and think of the stupid racist fucking people that live out in the sticks because they don't fucking know any better. They've never seen a black person.
Yeah, well, there's nothing worse than the cops, but maybe that's another episode. I mean, since we're talking racism, clearly there's nothing worse than the warfare state, whether it's imperial powers or the drug war, because
I got into an argument a couple weeks ago. A friend of mine tagged me in some post, and it was like, go and tell every. No, it was a good one. She tagged me in it. And it was, everyone needs to be told that they're beautiful and whatever, and taxation is theft, and the government. it was one of those things, and I appreciated it. And then
that's awesome.
and then her friend, when a fellow musician here in Cleveland, goes and posts on it. Oh yeah, but let's take back our sidewalks. And I just happened to be, I just happened to be in a mood this particular day, and so I just fingers aflutter, just the war machine, my black daughter, like the police state, and all this stuff, and literally just got to a point where I'm like, he's blah 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 blah. I'm like, okay, so what you're saying is that sidewalks are more important than dead brown people in the United States and in other countries. Just so we're clear. You think that sidewalks and perhaps a fire department that exists anyways, trust me, there's plenty of volunteer fire departments out there. You think that those things are more important than dead black people. Just so we're clear, you're the lefty here. You're the one on the left wing. You're the progressive.
There's the Horton rule there again.
Right. You're the progressive here.
It always comes into play, and even the people who now are using good rhetoric on the left on warfare, whether sometimes from Bernie or Tulsi, it's still not all encompassing, and that's
well. Now I was just about to say, what are your thoughts on the whole Tulsi thing? Because she's just lighting up the libertarian world right now, where some people really hate. Well, me neither.
So, and I actually think, oh man. So I run this 10th Amendment Center organization, and I believe in the fact that if you spend any time thinking or focusing on the 202 area code, you are wasting your time. So I don't think that there's any chance of anyone coming in on a horse, white or other, to save anybody. It's just not going to happen. So the only way to actually kind of advanced liberty is going to be on a more local level and individual level, or the markets. And to me, weed is the greatest example of that. We see, 20 plus years here in California of marijuana legalization at various levels. And now we have 33 states that are doing this, even though the federal government claims at every single level that you can't. And to me, this is a blueprint. No one actually elected a president to do that. People just started. This starts out with individuals, and then businesses, and then eventually states or local communities start saying, I want to get in on that. And then when you have all of that together, it's basically bringing down prohibition on a plant from the bottom up. Okay. So that's my thought on the whole Tulsi thing. I like the idea that Tulsi is injecting talk of foreign policy to some level. I don't think it's going to last very long, and I wouldn't recommend putting too much energy there, personally.
The last 3 presidents all ran on ending foreign wars.
Well, and that gets back to what I was saying about Trump, how you're not human if you love war. You're just not natural. Of course you're going to win on that. So did Teddy Roosevelt, basically, or Woodrow Wilson, one of those awful people, did the same thing. We're not going to get into World War I. They always do that because I think human beings recognize that whether another human being is in China or Iran or in Germany, your average person, you could go visit them and probably break bread with them and not want to kill each other. It's governments doing that, and of course they're going to run on that. And I think people like Biden, who's a butcher, who I may be at the end, or Elizabeth Warren, I don't trust these people, even if they start sounding good.
Trump's going to win again. I have no doubt.
I don't know. And I remember when Trump was first running, I hang out with a lot of lefties here in LA, and I'm in this running club, and one of my Bernie buddies is, talking, and I'm like, we were talking about Trump during the actual campaign, and I'm like, one thing I like that he's been talking about, he's been going after the Bushes on Iraq, but I don't trust him. I think he's full of shit, and when it gets comes to shove, he'll be like a politician, and I think all of them are like that. So you could have the best sounding person on the left or the right, but once they get in there, they are not changing the status quo.
Well, now here's the question. Here's the real question. Do you think that's because they're horrible people, Or do you think that's because the first thing they do is pull you into a room and say, now here's the way this can go, and this is what happened to Kennedy?
Okay. So love or hate Oprah, right?
Okay.
Love or hate Michelle Obama. Both of them have said specifically, I'm not cut out to run for president. I don't want that lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I think people, whether you agree with what they do or not, I think the natural state is not to want to be in a position of power over other people. I think the fact that we live under the most powerful government in the history of the world, and I can say we, meaning everyone on earth, lives under the power in some way of the biggest government ever. And it's only getting bigger every year. And I think people who are drawn to that are the ones who love power. Maybe a random, rare person, Ron Paul, once in a lifetime or two, will actually try to gain office. But I don't think Ron even really ever believed he was doing it. He was doing it as a tool to actually get the message out. So even Ron Paul wasn't attracted to the office. The people who are drawn to that are megalomaniacs in my book. They're just sociopaths in some way that they think either they're going to make everything better or not. That, to me, that is a bad person.
Yeah, I mean, so do you think it would be better if we gave the position just randomly to some random American?
Oh, good God. That sounds awful. I mean, it sounds like a heck of a movie of a week, but it sounds awful.
It's basically...
He's like, way to enable the deep state even more. Put someone with no ability to fight him. No, nothing.
That's amazing. I don't know. I mean... I hear a lot of people talk about Trump, for example, saying, his advisors are really running the show. But the dude anybody who hires John Bolton is not a good person in my book. If Starbucks hired Bolton to be a regional manager, they're also awful.
I mean, I don't know that I'd hire anyone with that mustache. Just that alone is enough to not hire somebody.
It really is just that. Maybe it's because he played trumpet too early in his life. To my mother. Oh, that's what we call in the industry a callback.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, he was always one of those people. He'd be on my list of people I would be okay sending bullets at.
So, or Dick Cheney, for example. I was in a very serious interview on some San Diego radio station. This is one of, I got to find an archive.
Well, welcome to the puff piece, everybody.
You said it. So, at some point, they're asking me, and I'm like, well, everyone knows Dick Cheney is a lizard.
I'm okay with that.
Pause. I don't know where that comes from, but basically all of those people are just evil monsters to me.
I mean, lizard monsters, whatever. I think that makes almost more sense. I think there's some awful things that have happened in the government, and if that's the way that you have to cope with the fact that... Oh,
interesting.
If it makes more sense to you to believe that they have to be lizards and can't be human, to compartmentalize that you just don't want to believe human beings can be that evil...
Yeah,
I can respect that because, I don't know that I want to believe people can be that evil.
Yeah, and they are pretty awful. And yeah, I guess that's the long version of, are all these people just awful? Look at like Tulsi's economic and gun control views. They're just terrible. And that's as good as, if you're grading on a curve, she's amazing.
It's one hell of a curve.
That shows how bad things are. And that shows how much, again, how if you are spending any time, if you just think that the 202 area code doesn't exist, you're probably doing something better.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we've probably taken up too much of your time for today, but I did have one more question.
I thought we were just getting started. You don't have your show tonight.
No, I do have a show tonight. Actually, I got to...
Hello, Cleveland.
I got to go... Where am I playing? Terrestrial Brewing tonight.
There you go.
Do you have to do sound too? Do you have to lug in speakers?
I do.
There is some lugging involved.
It's a tiny place. I've got a Bose system, and that's what all I need. So
what? Just like, do you bring pedals, the whole thing?
I think I have a looping pedal that I'll use tonight, but that's about it.
Nice.
Yeah, the Bose Tower, and I have a rolling case. I put almost everything in, but that.
Oh, cool! You don't even have to bring a mixer then, really, right?
Actually, I have one of those fancy ones that you work with a tablet. And since I only do one type of performance, I just don't ever touch it. It's just
Oh, well, that's awesome. You just get it set how it's going to be at
And then
one
it's-
venue, and it's perfect.
yeah, it's just ready to go, and all I've got to do is kind of tweak the volume knob for the individual plays.
What's the app?
Well, the actual device I use is a Behringer X Air 12.
What
Yeah.
happened to Behringer? Behringer used to be just junk.
You remember that? That wasn't very
I
long
do.
ago either. The fact
No, and they
that-
really shifted. They've made some old rain gear. They basically copied some old school gear. That's really cool.
Well, and that's exactly it. They're a German company, I believe, and so
Yeah.
they kind of they have some leeway in copyright laws, which means they can make really expensive gear much cheaper, which is great for consumers.
No way. I didn't realize that because Behringer is really affordable. But back in the day, and I guess it wasn't really long ago, if you had like a Behringer compressor, you could count on it like going bad.
Well, my big thing was always the equipment wasn't necessarily bad, but it was always built and constructed horribly. And then all of
Yeah.
a sudden, they came out with this device called the X32.
Okay.
And the X32 is a big studio mixer, like 32 channels.
Oh, nice.
It's got the built-in computer. If you want to, you can take just that and an SD card and record 32 channels of show, all of your plugins built into the thing itself. And every venue in the country bought one because it was expensive at like $3,000. But
yeah.
it was literally
Compared to $15,000 or $20,000 or $50 for a vintage, like a
yes.
or something like that.
You know, and it was already an interface, so you didn't need to do any of that stuff. We plugged directly into the computer. You could do that. Well, now they have that same device, but they got rid of all the knobs and whistles and because it always had the function where you could use it with a tablet. Well, now they have the $800 version or $1,000 version of it that doesn't even have any knobs on it. It's just a rack mount unit that you plug your cables into, and it's only run by a tablet.
Dude, that's amazing.
So they've taken this incredible technology and made it so condensed and so affordable that, like, I mean, you go.
You have like a compressor app and the whole thing. You have like plugins.
It's all built in. And like the X Air is an even cheaper version of that, essentially. And that's what I have.
So cool.
So like I've got the compressors and the EQ all set on the 4 channels I use: 2 vocals, 2 guitar. I keep the same guy plugged into them each gig, and then I just do what I need to do in them. I've got a little EQ on my guitar that like built into the active electronics that I can tweak if I need to do a little tweak. But that's it.
Man, and it's funny. I tried to sell some gear maybe like 2 years ago. I've got like some really nice DBX compressors and some old Yamaha mixers.
It's like they were
I've got
not
some
paying nothing for it because it's all in
No
computers
one wants
now.
it. No one wants it because everything is a plug-in now. So it's really hard to.
Well, and it was weird coming through that because I grew up like when I first started playing music, like it was at the tail end of buying actual gear,
Yeah.
and now everything literally is that. It's just plugins, just built into the machine. Now, granted, I still get into effects pedals, which are a little those are actually more expensive now than they used to be.
Oh, for real?
Because effects pedals, the thing is like, so when you used to have like an effects pedal, you'd have like 3 knobs on an effects pedal.
Yeah.
Now everything is boutique. So if you're buying an effects pedal, it's going to have 14 different knobs on it to control every possible parameter, and they get creative with the parameters that you can tweak. And it's
And
like,
this goes back to what you were saying about how everybody can make music now.
yes, and that's exactly it. You can make exactly what you want to. The fact of the matter is like, just in that, even having a venue, like how much was a PA to put together back in the day? Like
A lot.
Like I can.
I'd have to have a guy. I had a guy do it. Literally.
Exactly. Well,
There was a guy in town, so I had a guy in Milwaukee, I had a guy in LA, and I had a guy in San Francisco, and they were the guy who was known to have the after hours PA system.
Yeah.
And they would bring it in, and they would set it up for you, and they did this for all kinds of people.
that's crazy. Little
Not anymore, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's like I said, it's so affordable. You can do like, and I kind of came up doing like basement shows and punk houses and stuff like that.
Oh, cool.
And so, well, you used to have amplifiers and all that, and your speakers, and you're running. So like, all of the speakers that I own now are all self-powered.
Yeah, I had some powered speakers back in the day, and having to like lug around like a PV amp or something like that was nuts.
Yeah, like so I'm like, okay, so powered speakers and a mixer, and I'm good to go. You know how much more affordable it is? Like when
Yeah,
you don't
you
have
would
to be
need a
running.
separate truck. You had to have a separate truck at the time.
I travel from my gigs now. I travel gigs in a Kia Soul,
See,
which
now
reminds me. So
we're definitely talking old man talk at this point, right?
see, there is a band that actually reminds me of. I was thinking of that I'd love you to listen to, and it's one of my favorite bands in the world, and my daughter loves them too. But I found them from a Kia Soul commercial. If you remember back when they had the hamster commercials, I don't know if they
Yeah.
still do. There is a South African band called Goldfish, and they're a two-piece electronic DJ duo. But they're both trained jazz musicians,
Oh, no way.
and so the one guy plays like live flute and saxophone during their DJ sets,
That's cool.
and the other guy, does a lot of the live piano work and upright bass.
And they were part of the ad campaign? That's fascinating because my partner, Sarah, she used to run the work at the ad agency that
Well,
handled
their song Fort Knox it's a banger of a dance tune. And so they make this electronic music, but you look at them and they're playing their festival shows, and they're up there behind their DJ setup, and dude's playing upright bass, the other's got the sax broken out while they're doing their
awesome.
and their music is this weird like modern dance music meets like hot jazz at times.
Oh, here they are. I found them on YouTube.
So they're one of those groups, and then like I get into Caravan Palace a lot, which is
I don't
kind
know
of
them either.
Caravan Palace is very similar. It's like 1920s and 30s jazz meets modern electronic. It's like if you can imagine a chamber orchestra with dance beats behind it, that kind of shit.
Dude, I'm way into it.
So,
Okay.
all right. So if you were one last question, if you were to put together a "Let's keep us amped for taking on the government" playlist, what would you recommend? What are the highlights?
What did you say? Amped?
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Trust me, you got to keep the level of energy high, because if not, I'd give up.
All
very
my
quickly.
songs are depressing. Cool, Draft Dodger Rag, Give Peace a Chance, Imagine, Ballad of Ira Hayes by Cash, talking about how the Pima Indians were being used and abused. Like Ira Hayes is one of the guys who put up the Iwo Jima flag, and then he came back and was basically abandoned. In a
He's
ditch.
the anti-me, Liz. Like where you come across as all depressing and brooding, but really it's all upbeat underneath that. He comes across as all upbeat, and he's all depressing and brooding.
This is yin and yang, dude. This is all.
we did.
I'm hyper in my existence, but my music is like, if you're not like in tears afterwards, you got a problem. Although, I mean, this is the political motivation, but when I'm like listening to stuff, like Preservation Hall Jazz Band is a go-to for me. There's another one, they do old like gypsy jazz or New Orleans jazz called California Feet Warmers. They're a local band here, but they
Interesting.
travel quite a bit. So I listen to a lot of that sound when I want to feel happy. But when I want to be kind of focused on the machine, it really is very, very powerfully painful music.
Interesting.
Maybe that's the Meharry, because he listened to a lot of Depresso 80s stuff. It's just
Yeah,
a different
it's true.
version of it.
I feel like you're in a staring contest with him right now. Like, did you do this to me?
Always. Except he's in Florida near a beach. Well, I guess I'm always in LA now.
Right.
Is that where he is? Florida?
No, he's visiting his mother, who's actually
Where is he in Florida? Because Florida sucks.
north, east, something.
Fuck that whole state. I hope it falls in the goddamn ocean. And I can say that because I'm from Florida. Fuck the state.
Oh, you could say that if you weren't, technically.
I mean, I could. It'd be
It's
a dick
allowed.
move.
It's probably easier for you to get away with it
Yeah.
since you were.
They can come and fight me if they want. I've had
All
plenty.
right, so tell us about your gig tonight, and then we'll. Oh, why am I running the show?
He's not running the show. But besides, if you're trying to do like the whole "let's see if I can take over the show," Nathan
Yeah.
Frazier has you way beat.
Oh, I thought like
Nathan Frazier hosted my show when he
He
was on
did.
my
He's
show.
just like,
It was
so here's
amazing.
what's gonna happen.
he was asking you questions.
He
So-
was.
He was literally.
Early days.
I gave him I literally let him host the show for a half an hour because I'm like, I'll just go with it. Whatever, we're cool. I wanted to
I
be
bet that was
comfortable.
fun.
Let's everyone be comfortable. So, anyways, it was been so fantastic having you. Let's get some last minute plugs in there. Where do people need to go to find out about you and what you want them to find about?
I mean, I don't know. I'm not in a marketing mood.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
No, you could go to 10thamendmentcenter.com if you guys want to read stuff. But if you just want to hang out, find me on Facebook, Michael Bolden.
Well, there we go.
Or go to Twitter. I think Michael Bolden on Twitter is important.
I tend to be a little more angry on Twitter. Well, not necessarily angry, but I tend to be more,
Feisty.
condescending towards our enemies of freedom.
All of my favorite people are on Twitter. That's why I like
I'm
to
gonna
go.
say, see, Nikki goes to the Twitter for the snark. So
Liz, what is the what did I tell you
just
about
keep
Twitter?
it coming.
It's a battleground.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So
I'm there
Twitter
for Michael
is where
Malice.
I'll talk shit on Twitter, not to the Malice level. He's way better at it. And I only really started using it recently, so I don't have tons of followers or anything. On Facebook, you'll find more pictures of stuff that I'm doing, or eating. Primarily things that I eat, you'll find on Facebook. And then if you're interested in the work that we do, that's 10thamendmentcenter.com, where we are basically going around the country or wherever the internet's and telling people to disobey almost every law in the
You
books.
do
Nice.
you do like live streams and stuff that you post to on there, don't you?
Yeah, I do a Monday, Wednesday, Friday live stream called Path to Liberty, where it's some of it's Constitution basis. Sometimes, I mean, it's always ANCAP friendly because the end goal is trying to advance more liberty. So, talking about stuff, whether it's current events or maybe some historical stuff, interesting perspective. And basically, the goal is to kind of teach people how to get things done rather than focusing on some candidate or just owning the left or defeating the right or whatever it may be, and how to actually advocate and advance liberty in our lifetimes. Steal from the Free State Project people. But
What do you see as like a big win that we've had for freedom in the past couple of years?
weed is it's a broken record. And I've had people tell me who want to interview me like, oh man, we've heard the marijuana story, but the marijuana story is historic in my book.
You don't think it's been overshadowed by the psilocybin mushroom story now?
Well, it'll go there too. The thing is, I think people are recognizing that you don't have to wait on the central government for more freedom. We've been trying to push people that support the right to keep and bear arms to build and create gun rights sanctuary cities. I know some people talk about this happening. No one's really doing it yet because literally we're just using this Rosa Parks approach of stop participating. Hoppe even says this. Literally, Hoppe has said in 1997 in a speech from the Mises Institute, he specifically said if you want to defeat the central state, stop participating in the enforcement of each and every federal law on a local level. He was talking about maybe having 1,000 individual kind of city states as the next tier forward. But if you're thinking about the status quo, he said stop helping them enforce it.
Well, literally within the conversation that we've had just now, I'd gotten a post on Facebook that somebody commented on something like, so I said I grew up lived in New York State, and I lived in New York State when the SAFE Act was passed.
Oh, nice.
And I also
you were there for the opposition, right?
Well, I also lived in New York State when all of those sheriffs on the eastern or on the western part of the state said, okay, we're not going to do anything about this though.
Yeah.
And that's literally what it boils down to. Is like they can pass whatever laws they want to in those places, but good luck getting the people that actually have to deal with them to enforce them. They don't want to.
They don't have the enforcement capability, and I've actually looked into the numbers of various federal agencies. For example, the ATF, which we know should be just like the corner market, right? The ATFW, alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and weed. And like they have about 5,500 enforcement agents, 5,500 employees for the entire country. A third of them are in administrations, pencil pushers, right?
I was going to say,
they
most of those are office people, I guarantee it.
A third of them are office people. They actually do have enforcement agents. So what is that? I went to government school, so my math is bad. What, like 3,700 agents for the full country. And year in and year out. And if we're thinking, I know it's not a market actor, but if we think from that perspective on certain types of activities, your labor force size really dictates what you're going to be able to get done. And when it comes to stealing people's property, throwing them in prison for owning a firearm, for example, the amount of labor or the amount of funding you have to hire more labor really has a big impact on that. And year in and year out, they're able to close about 8,000 cases. So my talking point for quite a while now is if let's say there were 11 or 13 million undocumented short-barreled shotguns that violate the National Firearms Act of 1934. There's zero chance they'd be able to do anything about it. So, I mean, maybe a 0.5% they'd be able to stop, but they just don't have the capacity to be able to pull it off.
No, absolutely. And I'm gonna tell you right now, good luck anybody from New York State or federally going into Allegheny County, New York, and trying to rustle up some stuff, because they're gonna get a rude awakening.
Yeah, I mean, and that to me, and that's why the weed issue is so big, because it has actually taught us how this plays out. To me, it is the largest example, the most successful example of nullification of resistance in American history. At least you've got 33 states where people are saying, we're going to do this to various levels. Of course, in Ohio, it's going to be different than here in California, but at various levels, they're just doing things that government, the central government, is saying you can't. And that's basically what Hoppe said. He says, without local enforcement by compliant local authorities, the will of the central government is not much more than hot air. I think that's the exact quote. And that goes back to 97. You can love or hate Hoppe on everything else, but on that strategy, I think he's been proven to be correct.
See, he's talking strategies now. That's how you know he's racist, Liz.
I'm talking Hoppe, so
I'm okay
I've got
with it.
You know, I know that's a trigger for some people.
I know.
Yeah, the black woman over here is just like, he's talking about Hoppe again.
No, but you know what? Just because people have dumb things to say doesn't mean they don't say other things that are really intelligent.
Well, no,
So-
I mean, you'd know better than I do. Tom Woods routinely gets called racist. And
Oh, yeah.
personally, I don't know or even really care if he is. He could be. I don't think he is, but I really don't have any way to know. That being said,
Let's say
does it
Tom-
fucking matter?
Well, yeah. So let's say Tom is racist, right?
He's
He is advocating at the same time the end of the drug war
right.
and the end of all wars. So the racist then would be advocating the best thing that is creating racism, ending it.
yeah.
The biggest, worst, two of them at the same time. He'd be a really crappy racist.
Really
then.
crappy, yeah.
Yeah. And that's
So-
always what I built on. Like, most of the people that have ever existed on this planet have been racist. It's just, they all held slaves. It's part of how the world has worked for thousands of years. And luckily we moved past that. But are we supposed to throw out every good idea those dumb shits had? I think that's a bad idea. Let's take the good stuff and say, okay, we'll go over there and be racist, Uncle Tom, whatever you want to be.
Next person that says that to you, just remind them about the Autobahn. Can't have freeways because of Hitler.
Yeah.
Anyways. Whoa, that's a way to close out.
There you
Well,
go.
thanks for joining us today. We'll see you at next. Oh,
Thank you so much for coming on, Mike.
Thank you very much. It's
was-
been
you guys
delightful.
rule.
So you have yourself a
You guys
good day.
Likewise, have an awesome show tonight. And of course, we'll all keep in touch.
Absolutely.
Peace, guys.
Bye.
Peace.
Thanks. All right, guys. We hope that you really enjoyed that interview with Michael Bolden, because we sure did. It was pretty awesome. Just want to thank you again for listening to the show. You can always find us on all of the socials, or at least Nick's on Twitter. Yeah. But yeah. So thanks for listening, guys.
Take her easy.
Cling to your rule and work till your heart can